It all started with a single, unassuming ding. 3 seconds later, 32-year-old Eric Hayes realized he was trapped. The elevator lights flickered once, twice, then settled into a harsh fluorescent glow, humming like an unwilling participant in a sitcom. Outside, a brisk January wind rattled the old high-rise in Cedarville, Ohio. Snowflakes caught the weak winter sunlight, dusting the brick sidewalks like powdered sugar on a forgotten pastry. People hustled past the front doors, scarves wrapped haphazardly, boots sloshing through wet slush, coffee in hand. Inside, Eric's world had narrowed to 4 metallic walls, a digital floor counter, and a red emergency button glowing innocently. Eric Hayes, slightly overweight, dark brown hair starting to thin at the crown, stubble shadowing his jaw, wearing a wrinkled grey coat and plaid scarf, muted his frustration with a chuckle. He pressed the buttons again, hoping for a miracle, but the elevator stayed put, 1 floor above the lobby, refusing to cooperate. Within seconds, the door opened on the 3rd floor, revealing a small crowd of co-workers caught in an unfortunate timing trap. There was Marissa Carter, 26, blonde ponytail, big glasses, pastel scarf haphazardly draped over a navy peacoat, and George Thompson, 54, stocky with a bushy mustache, reading glasses sliding down his nose, muttering about HVAC failures. Their expressions were a mixture of embarrassment, bemusement, and shared recognition that life, in its own ironic way, had just pressed pause on them. Eric leaned against the wall, and the first sound wasn't a complaint, it was laughter. A short, incredulous laugh that broke the tension and invited more. Soon, everyone was chuckling, a mix of nervous energy and shared absurdity. He realized in that moment, elevators, like life, have a way of forcing strangers into intimacy. Forced proximity breeds stories, jokes, and sometimes, unintentional life lessons. They tried joking about work, office gossip, and weekend plans, slipping easily into camaraderie. The old carpeting smelled faintly of industrial cleaner, mingled with George's cologne and Marissa's lavender hand lotion. Eric noticed how each detail, from the cramped buttons to the fluorescent ceiling panels, seemed to shrink the world into something manageable, yet absurdly comedic. The elevator shuddered slightly. A warning beep echoed. The trio glanced at each other. Eric, trying to lighten the mood, narrated their predicament in mock heroic tones. Trapped in the vertical tin can of destiny, we face the trials of the staircase-less floor. Marissa rolled her eyes but laughed anyway. George, surprisingly nimble for his age, added a running commentary about past elevator incidents, turning small disasters into punchlines. Their collective humor made the situation feel less like entrapment and more like a stage set for learning patience, resilience, and human connection in miniature. Time stretched. Minutes became infinite. Snow turned the streets outside into a muted landscape of winter blues and whites, muffled by the insulated elevator walls. Yet inside, shared laughter and storytelling transformed anxiety into bonding. Eric realized he had not just met colleagues but discovered the subtle, comedic grace of human togetherness under pressure. By the time a technician's voice crackled through the intercom promising release, the trio felt oddly reluctant. They had been forced into proximity, humor, and vulnerability, and in that small metallic world, life lessons had been sneaked in amid jokes about frozen buttons, slippery floors, and George's unfortunate sock pattern. As the elevator creaked back to life, the trio prepared to exit, carrying with them not just relief but a newfound appreciation for connection, humor, and the unexpected lessons hidden in everyday frustrations. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Eric Hayes shifted his weight from one foot to the other, the buttons on the elevator panel glowing faintly, as if mocking his impatience. Outside, the winter sunlight had dulled under heavy clouds, and the snow had turned into a fine drizzle that slicked the streets. The elevator hum persisted, a monotone soundtrack to his predicament. Marissa Carter attempted to lighten the mood by recounting a story about her cat knocking over a Christmas tree, embellishing details so lavishly that Eric found himself laughing uncontrollably. George Thompson interjected with a tale of his own misadventures at a grocery store escalator, complete with exaggerated sound effects and hand gestures. The trio's laughter became a rhythm, punctuating the tiny space with warmth that contrasted sharply with the cold steel walls. Eric's mind, usually preoccupied with deadlines and minor anxieties, cleared as he focused on the absurdity of the situation. He noticed the way Marissa's glasses slipped slightly down her nose every time she laughed, or how George's mustache twitched when he smirked. These small details grounded him, reminding him that even in minor inconveniences, there were human stories unfolding. Trying to pass the time, Eric initiated a playful elevator Olympics, using the cramped space to mimic stretching exercises and gentle push-ups, earning peals of laughter from Marissa and George. They started improvising nicknames for each other, turning the elevator into a temporary theater of camaraderie. The metallic walls echoed their jokes, amplifying their connection. A faint beep indicated a maintenance alert, and Eric pressed the intercom button. The voice of the building superintendent crackled through, apologetic and slightly amused, promising that help was on the way but giving no exact ETA. This uncertainty could have been frustrating, but instead, the trio leaned into humor, inventing imaginary scenarios of what would happen if the elevator decided to stay permanently, turning a small setback into a shared comedy routine. As the minutes continued, conversations deepened. Eric shared a story about his childhood dreams of becoming a cartoonist, long abandoned for practicality. Marissa revealed her ongoing struggle to balance work with her passion for photography. George admitted he had recently started learning the piano, fumbling notes with evident delight. Each revelation, wrapped in humor, formed an unexpected bond, lessons of vulnerability, patience, and embracing imperfection. Eventually, the soft shudder of the elevator announced movement. Relief rippled through them, but a strange reluctance lingered. They had enjoyed the odd intimacy created by the delay. Stepping out onto the lobby floor, their shared smiles and lingering chuckles testified to the fact that a minor inconvenience had transformed into a memorable human experience. Eric walked past the snow-dusted streets with a new perspective. The elevator incident became a story he would recount with warmth and laughter, a symbolic reminder that life's delays are often opportunities for connection, insight, and unexpected joy. Humor, he realized, could be a bridge to understanding others, a tool for patience, and a gentle way to transform frustration into growth. Eric Hayes awoke the next morning with a renewed sense of possibility. The previous day's elevator delay had become a private emblem of patience, humor, and connection. Outside, Cedarville shimmered under a pale winter sun, snow crusting over sidewalks and rooftops, while neighbors trudged with coffees and bundled children. The town, small yet bustling, hummed with daily life, a canvas on which Eric intended to paint his newfound perspective. Arriving at his office, a brick-faced mid-rise on Main Street, Eric moved with a subtle lightness in his step. The building's lobby, once a mundane prelude to his workday, now felt like a gateway. Colleagues greeted him with casual nods. A few remembered his elevator story, some not. The familiarity of the workplace, once taken for granted, now bristled with opportunity. Small interactions carried new significance. He passed Marissa Carter at the coffee station, her pastel scarf wrapped neatly, glasses perched confidently. "Morning, Eric," she said, and their brief exchange radiated warmth. George Thompson, reviewing documents nearby, gave a quick smirk and wink. Eric chuckled, appreciating the subtle continuity of the shared experience. The elevator had shifted their dynamic, proving that even fleeting incidents could create lasting human bonds. The day unfolded with tasks and meetings, but Eric's internal lens had transformed. Each challenge, a delayed email, a misfiled report, a last-minute request, was now a potential moment for creativity, humor, and collaboration. Rather than sighing or stressing, he approached each with the playful problem-solving mindset honed in the elevator. Colleagues responded positively, and small victories, the resolution of a confused client call, the smooth delegation of unexpected workloads, cemented his confidence. During lunch, Eric found himself mentoring a new intern, Tina Ramirez, 21, bright-eyed, eager, who struggled to navigate company protocols. Instead of criticizing, he used playful analogies, referencing their elevator adventure. Tina laughed and relaxed, absorbing guidance without intimidation. Eric realized that leadership, like humor, often emerged organically from shared experience and empathy. Mid-afternoon brought a surprise, a meeting with upper management to present a proposal Eric had been developing quietly for months. Nervous energy tingled, yet he applied the same lessons: patience, awareness, adaptability. The presentation was polished, and he skillfully infused moments of humor to keep the room engaged. Questions came fast, but he answered with clarity and occasional wit. By the end, the executive smiled genuinely, acknowledging both competence and character. After work, Eric joined Marissa and George for coffee at a nearby cafe, recounting the day's small triumphs. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and insistent. The trio's laughter spilled onto the sidewalk, attracting smiles from passing pedestrians. The connection forged in metal and fluorescent light now extended into the wider world, reminding Eric that humor and resilience could ripple outward. Walking home later, Eric reflected on the chain of events. An inconvenient elevator delay had become a microcosm of life's larger challenges. Obstacles no longer appeared as barricades but invitations to observe, adapt, and engage creatively. Connection, humor, and empathy, each had been amplified by a simple shared ordeal. The world seemed less rigid, more malleable, and infinitely richer. By the week's end, Eric had implemented a series of small changes at work. A weekly humor huddle, inspired by their elevator antics, mentoring sessions that encouraged playful problem solving, and a subtle culture of acknowledgement and laughter. Colleagues embraced these shifts eagerly. Productivity improved, morale lifted, and the workplace felt less like a sequence of obligations and more like a community, mirroring the dynamics that had emerged spontaneously in the elevator. In the following months, Eric even volunteered to lead new hires through orientation, sprinkling lessons in humor, patience, and empathy into every session. His reputation grew not just as a capable professional, but as a human bridge, someone who transformed mundane inconveniences into meaningful experiences. Each story he shared about the elevator became symbolic, teaching that setbacks were never truly failures but opportunities for creative connection. Winter waned, and Cedarville softened under the approaching spring. Eric walked through streets now melting into slush and early blooms, carrying coffee and a notebook filled with observations, reflections, and small ideas. He understood deeply that life's delays, whether elevators, job complications, or social missteps, were integral to growth. Humor and human connection were not luxuries but essential tools, turning obstacles into lessons and bonds. By the time he paused at his apartment building, he looked back at the structure with a smile. The elevator, once a source of frustration, symbolized more than mobility. It represented patience, adaptability, shared laughter, and the power of human connection. Eric knew that life's small delays, if embraced thoughtfully, could lead to breakthroughs far beyond immediate perception. He stepped inside, ready for whatever challenges awaited, carrying humor, resilience, and the subtle joy of human camaraderie. Eric Hayes becomes trapped in an office elevator in Cedarville, Ohio, alongside two colleagues. Initially frustrated, the trio uses humor, storytelling, and playful interactions to transform the stressful moment into bonding and shared insight. Eric learns patience, adaptability, and the value of human connection. Applying these lessons at work and in life, he grows professionally and personally, mentoring others and creating a positive, collaborative environment. Humor and setbacks are revealed as tools for growth, connection, and resilience.
Like and subscribe if you want to be happy and motivate.